Good evening, and welcome to our TV show featuring documentaries revealing the realities behind myths using research and scholarship. I'm your host, Ergün Kırlıkovalı, and I will be with you every Sunday at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. You're welcome to send me your feedback at #ethocide. Repeat, #ethocide. Tashji, American-born son of Ottoman-Armenian and Ottoman-Syrian Orthodox parents, has devoted his whole adult life to defending Turkey and Turkish culture against unrelenting defamation campaigns launched by the anti-Turkish lobbies in the United States. His love of all things Turkish is so great that he taught himself the Turkish language. He refers to Turkey as my homeland. His car plate reads Vatan, which means homeland in Turkish. He wears gold crescent and star necklace every day to work. He carries the largest Turkish flag every year at the Turkish-American Day Parade in New York. He signs off his letters with a stamp that says, and quote, "Bana Türk dostu derler," unquote. Translation, they call me friend of Turks. His house in Queens, which I've been to, New York, is almost a miniature copy of the Topkapı Palace with countless Ottoman artifacts dating back to the 19th century. He has one of the largest Turkish, quote, taş plaks, unquote, earliest version of LP record collections anywhere. He has written thousands of letters to US politicians, scholars, media, companies, clergy, teachers, and whoever else would listen, forcefully and authoritatively enlightening them about the facts surrounding Turkish history. Türkiye wept when Tashji sang on Turkish TV sad Turkish songs of 1920s and 1930s that were taught him by his loving mother. Tashji has held the position of the director of the Public Relations Committee of the Federation of Turkish-American Associations, or FTAA for short, in New York, for more than a decade. Imagine the shock and bewilderment of a Turk hater when he defames the Federation or Turkish-American Associations in New York, with allegations of mistreatment of non-Muslim minorities in Turkey, and when he is told by no other than Tashji himself that he's an ethnic Armenian and volunteered to run the public affairs department of FTAA. Can there be a more powerful refutation of misinformation than this? His loving wife of 40-plus years, Mary Tashji, has been fully supportive of his actions. They do not have children. Tashji's autobiography, Armenian Allegations, The Truth Must Be Told, highlights this remarkable career. Here's the book. Tirelessly, sometimes single-handedly, took on the entire anti-Turkish lobby in the USA. Tashji is a gift to Turkey and the Turkish nation, a gift that kept giving while he was alive. Unfortunately, we lost him on June 22, 2005, at the age of 73. To pay respect to Tashji's memory and introduce his peerless works, I will present to you his sworn testimony and statement. But first, let me share with you a typical letter he wrote to media to correct misrepresentations. This one was written to the Boston Globe on April 2, 2002, responding to the March 25th episode of U.S. Should Press Turkey on Terrorism, and protesting the distortion of Turkish history in that op-ed. Its title was, "If the allegations against the Turks were true, the Greek Patriarchate and the Armenian Patriarchate would not be found in Istanbul. Doesn't even the title tell it all? He goes like this. Your op-ed is a quintessential example of the fraud perpetrated by the Armenian hate merchants since 1890. As the son of an Ottoman-Armenian and Ottoman-Syrian Orthodox parents, I have devoted my life to educating my country of the true events of Ottoman Turkey and the suffering of all the peoples of a land ravaged by a world war. Karakostas evidently never learned about the revolutionary paramilitary groups that since 1895 were responsible for the deaths of hundreds of thousands of Turkish civilian and military forces. The highest levels of government achieved by Armenians, Greeks, and Jews was another fact that he overlooked. If the allegations against the Turks were true, the Greek Patriarchate and the Armenian Patriarchate would not be found in Istanbul. The Jewish and Syrian Orthodox religious entities would not be found there either. Karakostas's name begins with a Turkish syllable, kara, which means black in Turkish, as does my name, as do 85% of Armenian family names. These are but a few simple facts he and your newspaper will not print because of bias. After all, this is Boston. At Tashji, Director of Public Affairs, Federation of Turkish-American Associations, New York. Now, please allow me to read that magnificent sworn statement by Edward Tashji. Sworn affidavit by Edward Tashji. The following commentary is presented as a sworn affidavit by the undersigned and is intended to express explicitly my position on the subject of Turkish-Armenian relations. Being of sound mind and body, fully cognizant of my statements, free of any coercion or any suggestion of any monetary recompense, I hereby declare the comments in this written material are solely mine, and for which I take full responsibility. My signature follows this declaration, and it will appear at the conclusion of this commentary at Tashji. This is not intended to portray even a semblance of any historical research, nor to create a subterfuge in the expression of my thinking and sincere feelings on a subject to which I have devoted a lifetime of attention. Simply stated, these pages are intended to reveal my position on a highly emotional issue based upon childhood experiences and exposure to both Armenian and Turkish communities. And as a result of long years of effort, the purpose of this lifelong effort has been, and by the grace of God, will continue to be twofold. First, to continue the bond of brotherhood between the Armenian and Turkish peoples. Two, with the continuance of the 6 centuries of trust and harmony, to eradicate an infectious hatred which has manifested itself in innocent hearts and minds of succeeding generations. To say that my task has been most difficult and potentially dangerous to my life is not an exaggeration, as the content of this commentary will confirm. The average American is unaware that a serious problem between these ancestral brothers even exists. However, as a result of a blatant anti-Turkish posture and on the part of our news media, together with the acceptance by many members of Congress of one version of a tragic story, the Turkish nation and its God-fearing people are being accused of genocide. The absurdity of the charge is equal only to the mindless hate merchants within the Armenian community. So why should my pro-Turkish position be of interest to anyone outside the Turkish community? It should, I say. It must, I emphasize, because I'm not Turkish, nor am I of the Muslim faith. In reality, I'm a Christian and an Armenian. I was born in Troy, New York in 1932 as the second son of an Armenian mother and a Syrian father, who had been eyewitness to the tragic events which took place in Ottoman Turkey during the First World War. In spite of their suffering, in spite of their losses, in our home, our parents had taught us not to hate the Turkish people. In fact, just the contrary was instilled in our hearts. We learned the realities of those events, about which the West has accepted only one interpretation, as historical fact. My wife's background is similar to my own, except that both of our parents were Armenian. Her support of my efforts and her endless patience have been my greatest source of encouragement. Do you think, dear reader, any book, any newspaper account, or any politician could outweigh the influence upon me by my parents who were there? They had no reason to give me false information, and their greatest gift to me was to love the traditions and culture of our peoples. Because of their wisdom, their compassion, and their humanity, I was destined to be free of all animosity. Based upon their comments to me, and after years of study and effort, which cannot be described here, I offer for your consideration the following facts, which should be recognized by every member of the US Congress. 1. That the Armenian people had suffered in the Ottoman Turkey during the First World War is beyond dispute. Their suffering was brought about as a result of the ravages of war. They suffered as did the Arab, the Jew, the Syrian Orthodox, the Greek, as well as the Turkish Muslim. The suffering of the Armenians was not as a result of genocide. To this day, the other ethnic and religious groups which had endured those terrible days have not referred to being the victims of genocide in Turkey. But Armenian extremists have used the term genocide as a way of concealing their own crimes. 2. My mother was born in Balıkesir, not far from the city of Izmir. In her town, she had remembered that there were organized Armenian political factions determined to overthrow the government and engaged in war activities against Turkish military forces, as well as thousands of innocent civilians. These groups were active in Turkey then, as they continue to be active to this day in the United States. These are the names of the people who were in those infamous groups: the Ramgavar, the Hanchak, and the fanatical Dashnak Sagan, all spelled phonetically. These armed revolutionaries were headed by a maniacal fringe who had even attacked Armenians who didn't support them in their treachery and disloyalty against a country where for 7 centuries they had prospered and enjoyed total freedom. 3. As a child, my mother had learned a song which had been taught in Armenian school to all the children. The following is a translation from the Armenian of only the words I remember. Let us slaughter the Turks. Let us establish our own country. What would be our reaction today in America if any cultural or religious community taught their children to kill Americans? 4. Many Armenians, after leaving their homes, were allowed to return and take possession of their homes and properties. My uncle was one who returned to his home, and my wife's aunt, who is still living, was another. Her family had returned to their home in Adıyaman. 5. As a refugee, my mother was taken into the home of an Armenian family in the town of Kilis. They lived in a house which they owned, and this was toward the end of 1915. 6. The long list of ethnic Armenians who had attained the highest positions in the Ottoman government is a matter of record. 7. Armenian fanaticism in Ottoman Turkey spread to our country during those years, and it continues to this very day. The Armenian community and church in the United States is torn apart by bitter hatred within its own family. Many Armenians, especially those who came from Turkey in recent years, do not feel any hatred against the Turkish people, but dare not make their feelings public lest they be castigated by church and community leaders. In 1932, for example, while celebrating Mass on Christmas morning, the Armenian Archbishop Turian was assassinated by members of an opposing Armenian group. Imagine that. Today, Armenian terrorism has taken the lives of over 65 innocent Turkish diplomats and family members worldwide. 8. A so-called Armenian purportedly made by Adolf Hitler, referring to the plight of the Armenian, was, after extensive research, proven to be false by historian Robert John, who, like myself, is born of Armenian ancestry. 9. The following is an example quotation from a pamphlet printed and distributed by the Armenian Revolutionary Federation here in New York. Its history: struggle for national liberation, founded in 1890 as a confederation of various action groups struggling for Armenian national and human rights. The Armenian Revolutionary Federation, ARF, known as Dashnaksutyun, carried on this struggle with all available means: political action, propaganda, and at times armed struggle. Direct the attention of the reader to the date, 1890. 25 years before the Armenians began with their theme song, Genocide. I'm certain you made note of the words armed struggle. 10. In her book entitled The Armenian Revolutionary Movement, the author Louise Nalbandian says about her book in part the following, quote, "This study covers in detail the armed struggle of the Armenian revolutionists against the Ottoman government, beginning with the first major disturbance in 1862 and extending to 1896, unquote. And they still speak of genocide. It is the Turk who is justified in accusing the Armenian of this heinous crime. There is more, much more, which I can refute the allegation made against Turkey. Once again, our Congress considers the so-called Armenian resolution. How dare they sit in judgment of a nation whose true history is not known by those who would accuse Turkey of genocide? I say, Mr. Senator and Mr. Congressman, examine your own history and consider the plight of the American Indian. Dear reader, these are the words of my beloved mother. My son, we had everything in Turkey. We had owned our own homes, our own farmlands, shops, and businesses. We were free in our schools, in our churches, and in our press. On religious holidays, Christians and Muslims would exchange greetings, flowers, and baskets filled with all kinds of foods. After having so much for so long, why should the Turks decide to destroy us? We, my son, we were responsible, beyond any doubt, for the misfortune that befell our people. We, the Armenians, were not loyal to our homeland, Turkey. Many years later, when several Turkish naval officers visited our home in Queens, New York, my mother had said to them, "Welcome, my children. This is your home. Welcome." She had become their mother, and we, their family in the United States. This is humanity. This is God's wish for all of us. This is the only answer if we are to give our children a world free of hatred. This is what I have found in the Turkish heart. I stand in awe of their compassion, of their warmth, their humanity. I'm proud that I have devoted a lifetime of service on behalf of our ancestral brothers and sisters. How we have labored, examples of our efforts, the identity of the long list of government officials with whom we have met, how we were able to learn to speak Armenian and Turkish, why our home is called an Ottoman home, and much more is for another time between two hard covers, perhaps. May I offer now my concluding statements. Dear reader, to the Armenian, I'm a traitor, one who has committed the greatest sin. To the Turk, I have become to be known as Türk dostu, a friend of Turks. Ours is the embrace of brotherhood. I offer the reader my greatest success, that for which I have devoted much of my life. And this you will read on separate pages following my commentary. I'm convinced that hate breeds more hatred. And as we were blessed to have parents who passed on to us their message of love, so have I spoken to all who care to listen. Our history, our culture, and traditions begin in Turkey as we have shared with her people the joys and the sorrows of that beautiful land. Today, the Armenians living in Turkey praise us for our efforts. The Syrian Orthodox community shares my position, and our children grow free of cancer of hate. Let the United States Congress honor the sacred memory of all the peoples that had suffered, not just the Armenians. And let not this resolution blemish the honor of a great people, the Turks. Edward Tashji, Director of Public Affairs Committee, the Federation of Turkish American Associations, FTAA. Will plain facts of 1915 survive the onslaught of the Armenian falsifiers, Turk haters, and Islamophobes? How can we make our case more effectively? Well, those are great discussions for another time. Thank you for joining me. See you next week.